Hi, Miss Sparks.
Hey, Mary Faith, how are you, honey?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
You surviving the hurricane?
I am surviving the hurricane. How about you?
Somewhat. My family's or my aunt's house might be destroyed in Florida. They have
Oh,
a beach house there, and it might be destroyed, but we don't know yet.
oh, honey, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
We have friends that live down there as well, but they
that's
were,
my
they
dogs.
were, I'm sorry.
My dogs were howling.
Oh, I couldn't even hear them, bless them. My dog will probably start in a minute because she'll
They
think
sound
that
like
I'm talking to her as usual.
they sound like wolves.
Um,
We have German shepherds, so they literally are wolves.
oh, that's interesting. Oh, so they talk to you.
Very much so.
Yeah, my greyhound talks to us too. Hey, Addison. Um, do you want me to just go through the guided practice, Mary Faith?
Yes, please.
Okay. Just starting at number one? Or is there a specific one that you want me to start with other than that?
Hello, Mrs. Sparks.
Hey, Addison, how are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Great.
I guess we're just going to start with, I'll just start with number one. And I can't actually write on the textbook, but I'm going to read the directions and then flip to a blank page where I can actually do the work. Find the slope of a line that passes through the points that are given. So that's 5 and 2 and 4 and -1.
So would you label them as like X1, Y1, X2, Y2?
Yes, you can definitely do that for sure.
Okay.
And just trying to keep things straight. And something that I do, this may, I'll kind of show you. This is the way I work things out on these. There's in my mind, I've got the points given are 5 and 2 and 4 and -1. And in the book they're written horizontally, like they're written like the 4 is written over to the right of the 5 and the 2. For whatever reason, when I write them vertically, it helps me keep them straight when putting them in the format. So this would be x1, y1, and this would be x2, y2. And for whatever reason, that just really, and then the formula is y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So I will now plug in the values -1 minus 2 because it helps me to look at this like that and just go up and then write them across.
That's a good
That's how
trick.
I keep it straight because
Is
to
there a
me,
specific reason why you subtract it, not add it?
yes, the original equation, the reason for that is because you're looking for the change in something. And if you begin someplace and go somewhere, like if I
Oh,
begin with $10 and I spend 5, I subtract it to find out where I am. So
okay.
you're looking for the change in the position of Y over the change in position in X.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
And I don't know why, for me, writing the points vertically just helps me keep it straight. because when I write them, for whatever reason, when I write things horizontally, so if I were to write them like this, I don't know why, but the switch seems longer to me to get them into position. And the likelihood of me messing up is greater. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like when messing up the actual points themselves. I seem to make more small errors, like I would actually might put the -1 and the 4 together for whatever reason when I write them horizontally. It doesn't make any difference. I'm just telling you shortcuts that have helped me, because that's what Math Lab is kind of for. I have less. One of the biggest simple mistakes when calculating slope isn't really that people can't add and subtract. It's actually keeping your points in the right place.
Yeah.
And it keeps me, also the other thing is if I make this like x2, y2, sometimes I'll do things like, okay, well, I'll have 5, or I'll do something like this, 5 minus 4, and I'll put that on top. You know what I'm saying? Where that's the X and it doesn't go on top. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just make more errors. I'm not trying to wish that upon you. I'm just trying to give you a suggestion of why this worked better for me. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and finish out the math on this. -1 minus 2 is -3. And 4 minus 1 is negative. 4 minus 5 is -1. So my -3 divided by -1 gives me a +3 for my slope.
Could you leave it as the 3/1? Or do
You could, if you wanted to, particularly because you're doing slope and you're looking for a change. I mean, if you wanted to do that, you could, because I know that you use the slope to graph sometimes. So I get where you're coming from. I just, on tests and things like that, like ACT, SAT, stuff like that, it would say M equals 3. So I wouldn't want that to confuse you. You know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am.
But great question. Okay, so then for number 2, the points are, would y'all prefer me leave this one horizontal this time? Or do you care that I write the points vertically?
I don't mind.
How about you, Mary Faith? Does it matter to you? Okay. -2, 3 is the next one. Y'all catch me if I write them down wrong too. And 4 and 6. So M equals, and then I've got 6 minus 3 over 4 minus 2. So 6 minus 3 is 3. And 4 minus a -2 is really 4 plus 2. So that's 6. So then that reduces to M equals 1/2.
Number 3, this one coming up, is the one that I had troubles on. They know how to.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful thing. It's a fraction. Everybody loves fractions, right, Addison?
Sure.
The wonderful thing about this fraction, though, is the denominator is the same. So at least we didn't have to get a common denominator.
Yep.
So that's good.
Hear you.
I'm sorry? You can't hear me? Hang on just 1 second. Did somebody accidentally mute me?
Oh, now I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the answer to number 2?
1/2. Did you get that, Mary Faith? Did you hear me?
Oh, she left the call for some reason.
It must be when I switched to this page that
Oh, she joined again.
okay. I wonder if it's when I switched to this page that she can't hear me. Can you hear me now, Mary Faith? Can you hear me now, Mary Faith? Addison, can you talk to her and see if she can hear you?
Sure. I'll see if she can.
I'm just going to write the problem while you text that.
Miss Sparks, it just
You have a bad connection?
Yeah, it kicked me out.
Oh, it kicked you out. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Addison, for helping also.
You're welcome.
Okay. So the points are 9/2 and 5 and 1/2 and -3. All right. So I'm going to put in my points. So I'm going to do -3 minus 5. And then 1/2 minus 9/2. -3 minus 5 is -8. And 1/2 minus 9/2 is -8/2. And this reduces. So you would have m equals -8 all over -8 over this piece right here. The denominator is -8 divided by 2, which that reduces to -4. And then that reduces to a +2. So your slope is 2. Or Addison, you may have written 4/1. 2/1, my bad.
Okay. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Does that help?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That was a trickier one with it throwing in. They threw a curve in. Huh. All right. So number 4 on page 174. The examples on 174 were where you found a negative slope, the slope of a horizontal line, and the slope of a vertical line. Those were the examples 2, 3, and 4. So we're going to get a chance to work through all of those. So on number 4, and I have a way for you all to remember these also. So 5 and 2 is the first point, and 5 and -2 is the second point. So m equals -2 minus 2 all over 5 minus 5. So the top is -4 over 0. Uh-oh, that's a no-no in math. Cannot divide by 0. So that is undefined. When the 0 is the denominator, that's a no in math.
Miss Sparks, I missed half of that. It like muted.
Okay. Okay, so you saw me put the points there, right?
Yeah.
The 5 and the 2 and the 5 and the -2.
Yeah.
And then I just put in my points, -2 minus 2 for the y2 minus y1 all over 5 minus 5, which is the x2, x1. So I have -4 over 0. And
Oh, okay.
Zero is a no. A zero in the denominator is a no in math. No. You cannot do that. It is undefined. And what I can tell you is if I were to graph this, I would have 5 and 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 2, and 5 and -2. So this is a vertical line. And if you think of this in terms of skiers, like slope, you know, a skier could ski down this slope. You know, he'd be just fine. There's my skier, my stickman skier, skiing down that. If a skier were at the top of this slope, he would be undefined by the time he hit the bottom of that. He would be no more. Okay. He would not be a defined human being anymore, but he'd be just fine if he skied over here. He'd be just fine if he skied over here. He'd be just peachy keen, but he is not going to survive skiing on that. So if you think of that, you know,
Yeah.
all right. So that's what the slope of a vertical line is undefined. And if you think of that, if you think of a skier on that, you know that he is going to no longer exist by the bottom of that slope. Okay? So it's undefined by the definition of the fact that you can't have zero in the denominator, and it's undefined by the fact that it is the slope of a vertical line, and you cannot ski on a vertical line. So, you know, because that is one of the things that you connect slope with is skiing, because that's, you know, skiers say, oh, let's hit the slopes. So that's kind of a trick on trying to remember what slope is connecting it to that mountain. Okay, so that was number 4. And now we're going to work on number 5, and we're going to connect that to our skier as well. Number 5 is the points are 0, 4, and -3, 4. So I've got 4 minus 4 all over -3 minus 0. So that's going to be 0 over -3. Now that is a 0 slope. So M equals 0. And if I graph this, I'm going to go over 0 and down 4. Or I'm sorry, not down 4. My apologies. Up 4. And then over left 3, up 4. So this is a horizontal line. And my skier here, he's just fine on a horizontal line. Probably having 0 fun unless you're a cross-country skier and you like that thing. But as far as really, you know, hitting the slopes and having a good time, he's having 0 fun because it's horizontal. So undefined for vertical and 0 for horizontal. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yes.
Have a kind of a visual word picture connection to that?
Is there a reason you put the line to 0?
I'm sorry?
Is there a reason you put the line through the 0?
No, I will tell you why I do that. You know how when you're writing a lot of numbers and letters, a lot of numbers and letters, like if I, you know, like if I was writing something like giving you a password to something, 6M3, I always put a little line through 0, I think, because it distinguishes an O on the keyboard from a 0.
Okay.
That's nothing but an old habit of writing a lot of passcodes to things, I think, is the only reason. Nothing exciting. Okay, and now number 6, the points are 0, 6, and 5, negative 4. So my slope is negative 4 minus 6, and then 5 minus 0. So it's going to be negative 10 all over 5, which then reduces to negative 2. So my slope is negative 2. Were there more guided practice? Is there more?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I'm sorry? Say that again, Mary Faith.
Does M equal slope? Is that what it stands for?
Yes, it does. It does. That is the abbreviation for slope. And once again, they're like, where did that come from? But I just connect it to mountain. Mountain and slope. Mountain and slope, they go together.
Okay.
Yes, M is the abbreviation for slope. Can't you so see that? There's an M in the word slope, right? No, Miss Sparks, that's not true. But I just think mountain.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I just try to think of all those things that, for me, I like word pictures and all of that. So, any other questions for today? Anything else that we've covered thus far in chapter 3 that you all would like clarification on?
This what's the word? This unit makes more sense to me. So.
Oh, then the relations and functions unit?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the relations and functions unit was a little more difficult, but it's actually, to be honest with you, because you pushed your brain through that, this unit will seem easier, which is good because this usually is a tough unit.
That's good.
Yeah. It was definitely hard, but good prep work for this unit, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Random question.
Yes, ma'am.
Next year,
I love random. Next year, what, baby?
Do we take geometry?
Yes, ma'am.
Wait,
why
You
doesn't
do
it
slope and geometry too.
Oh, that's great.
Why doesn't it go algebra 2?
I'm not exactly sure why that happens, to be perfectly honest with you. But you know what? Even back in my day, that many years ago, that's how they did it also.
Oh.
There is definitely some algebra in geometry. That's my favorite part of geometry. So you have to have that algebra, and it is more of algebra 1 application. It's, I guess, you know what, now that I'm kind of thinking through it and processing it out loud with you guys, which that always helps me, I think it's the application of the principles that you learned in algebra 1. So like all of the mathy stuff that we're learning this year, you're going to actually apply to shapes and reasoning next year. So you can't forget anything you learned this year, that's for sure, because I know you use next semester, like I know you use slope a lot, and then you apply the principle of slope to parallel and perpendicular lines, which we'll do that this year as well. But you'll really do a lot of that in geometry. Like when you're putting it with shapes, how I can prove that a line is parallel or perpendicular to a particular line to make me move to the next thought process. You do a lot of that. And then next semester we learn, Lord Jesus, please help me, quadratic formula and quadratic functions. And you use that a lot also. So
Will we have you next year?
No, ma'am.
No.
You don't have me next year. But then the next year you come back and I teach Algebra 2. I don't teach all of Algebra 2, but I'm a possibility of a teacher for Algebra 2.
So I'll get you junior.
You may or may not get me. It kind of depends. I only teach one of the 3 Algebra 2 classes. So, and then if you choose to take Algebra 3 instead of pre-calculus your senior year, I teach Algebra 3.
Oh.
So it kind of depends upon the track that you pick.
Algebra 3 sounds way less scary than calculus.
Yeah, I know pre-calculus does sound scary, but you know what's interesting is I call Algebra 3 pre-calc light because we go over almost every single thing that pre-calc does by the end of the year. We just do it in a different order. And I don't do any of the trig. That's the only difference. But a lot of the other things, it's interesting. Miss Stone and I always talk about the fact of like, oh, what are you teaching now? Because a lot of times I'm teaching something very similar. So you get almost the same thing. But my Algebra 3 class is actually college algebra. So you should be able to actually CLEP college algebra by the time you finish Algebra 3.
Really?
Yeah. So you can, you know how like you can take AP classes in high school?
Yeah.
And then like, and that will count as your college class if you pass the AP exam. I always encourage students at the end of Algebra 3, if you take that with me, to take a CLEP exam because it's the same thing. You can CLEP out of college algebra. And it counts as a college credit. So that's the track, the math track at Cornerstone Prep. But Miss Stone is a really, really, really good teacher for pre-calc and calc. So
Thank you for helping
geometry.
me.
Oh, hey, no problem. Happy to help. Thanks for showing up for Math Lab.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Y'all have a blessed day.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.